Hi, this is Rosalinda De La Luna, and I want to welcome everyone to Viewpoint, coming to you from SKC campus at Salish Community College in Pueblo, Montana. Thank you once again for being with me today. I have a wonderful special guest with me today who is also a very good dear friend of mine. This is Michelle Williamson. She is the Lake County coordinator of the Summit Independent Living Center, along with her husband, who also works with her, and his name is Scott Williamson. Michelle, thank you so much for coming on Viewpoint.
Thank you.
I really so much appreciate you being here. Michelle, just to give my viewers some information, Michelle and I have been long good friends, and also we have actually collaborated in a diversity training that we did together.
Yes, we did.
Do you remember when that was done?
That was done about 5 years ago.
About 5 years ago?
Yeah, we were doing a staff, orientation or staff training for disabilities and diversity. And one of the things that we did was do a panel together with other people. So that was really good.
That was how we kind of ended up knowing each other, and we bonded ever since then. And I just really appreciate you being here and being able to talk about disabilities. So you work with the Summit Independent Living Center that is in Polson, is that correct?
Yeah, no, it's in Ronan.
Ronan, okay, awesome. Well, can you tell us what the mission of this organization is?
Summit's mission is to promote independence for people with disabilities throughout Montana, but especially in the area from Lake and Kalispell all the way down into Hamilton. There are 4 different centers in the state of Montana that deal with independent living, but Summit deals with this area.
That is a lot of territory to cover. Tell me, when did it start?
It started October 1985 in this area. There was training to be done, and then there were peer advocates, and I'll explain peer advocates later.
We love to hear it. This is such a dear topic for me and for many other people that I have been working with you this past year to try and get you on the show, and you're finally here, so I'm just really excited. Can you please describe how the Summit Independent Living Center can help people?
Oh yeah, it has many services. We help people sign up for services such as food stamps, rentals, medical assistance. We help them with school. Like if some consumer came in with needs to go to SKC, we tell them all about SKC's programs. We help with public assistance. We help with Social Security, and we help with all those programs so that people with disabilities can be as independent as possible. Also, some of the services we offer through our Missoula office is that we have self-directed personal assistance services where people with disabilities can hire their family members or close friends to come and do housework and things that they need to have done.
That is a wonderful service. I know that it's such a needed service in this area. And can you? I was looking at the organization's website, and there was something on there that said peer-to-peer services. Can you explain a little bit what that means?
That is so cool to us. We like that program. That is where we get people with disabilities that have gone through transitions, say they had a stroke or had a car accident or whatever, and they've already experienced transitioning into their life as a person with a disability. And then we ask people, with disabilities to come and be peer mentors. And what that does is we try to match people with peers that have similar disabilities so that there's a common bond, and there's nothing that needs to be said about, well, I didn't experience that or whatever, because that person can then show that person how they dealt with certain issues and how they handled certain pressures and stuff like that. So we really like the peer-to-peer program. We think that's the most advantageous program that we have, is showing people that they have support.
That's great. You know, in my experiences, I've always have felt that peer education has always been a very valuable tool when trying to work with different kinds of people, diversity people, anyone, to have their own peers be able to educate them, talk with them, be with them, as what you said. And also something that caught my eye was what is called the self-advocacy assistance. Can you tell us more about what that does?
Well, there's two types of advocacy, and self-advocacy is just learning how to speak about what you want and what you need on your personal level. So we help people to learn how to speak to their doctors about issues for themselves, and how to speak to people when they're in the public about accessibility and about services that they might need, so that they're not coming across as rude, but their assertiveness is powerful, and it gets something done.
And what is the other type of advocacy that you do?
And the other type of advocacy is systems-wide advocacy. And the best example I could give of that is the Americans with Disabilities Act, where people finally said, this is enough. We're not going to be excluded from the employment market. We're not going to be excluded from public life. You have to let us in. And that's where the Americans with Disabilities Act really helped people with disabilities come out of the closet, come out of the shadows, and say, we're here. You're going to have to acknowledge me as a person first.
Do you remember when we did that orientation, and you and I talked about how the issues that I was talking about transgender, gay, bisexual, transgender issues and the disabilities issues, how they overlapped each other almost so well because of the same issues, trying to get rights, and as you said, coming out of the closet and stuff like that. I always have felt, in my personal opinion, that there's such a great overlap of why we advocate for ourselves and for our own rights as people with disabilities, as people who may be gay. Do you remember that conversation we had a long time ago?
And it's really important that people understand that these are civil rights that we're talking about, and
thank you.
There's a lot of things that can be done to support a person's independence. And when I said coming out of the closet before, when I was little, you didn't speak about disabilities, you didn't say anything, you didn't talk about it because it was considered taboo and rude. And one of the things that, although I think that the Americans with Disabilities Act was one of the most pivotal and important laws that came about in the United States, there were others that preceded that made the way for Americans with Disabilities Act to happen. And so it made it more palatable for people with no understanding of disabilities to finally say, oh, maybe we should think about including, people.
And we're going to talk a little bit more about the American Disabilities Act in our next half part of our show. But I just wanted to say is that with your advocacy assistance, I think that is so important because many people don't know how to ask for help. And some people are ashamed, some people are embarrassed. How do you help a person come across that fear?
We show them that it's okay. we give them our own stories. We tell them, the steps to do it, and sometimes we'll be right there in the office with them as they call an agency or call a service. Other times, people will work with me on the phone, and I will get information and then give it to the consumer.
And how do people contact you or the organization if they need more information? Because you're a great resource, and Summit for Independent Living Center is a great resource for people to know. Can you tell us how to contact you?
Sure. Our physical address is 111 2nd Avenue Southwest, Ronan. We're tucked in right next door to the Ronan Police Department, and our local number is 406-676-0190. And we are there from 8 to 5, Monday through Thursday. I work Tuesday, Thursday. Scott works Monday, Wednesday.
Wonderful. That's great. And your website address?
And our website address is www.summitilc.org.
Now, do you have any upcoming workshops or events that you're doing? I know that you're a busy lady, because I'm always talking to you, and you're always going, moving, and everything. So, do you have any upcoming trainings or events that people that may want to learn more about the American Disabilities Act, more about Summit Independent Living Center can attend?
Sure. We have one workshop that's going to be hosted by SKC's property. It's going to be Lead On, and it talks about the history of disability. Awesome. It's going to be for about an hour and a half, and it's going to be on August 17th, and it's going to be for about an hour and a half. Right now, the participants that we have are from the People First chapter of Ronan and Polson, but we would like to open it up to the public so that they can come and hear and learn about another type of history that's happened here in the United States.
If there's anyone that wants to volunteer, how do they become volunteers for the organization you work for Summit Independent Living?
Well, they can always call the number at 676-0190, and they can call us and ask us. And then we have what we call peer training, so that even if they just want to be a volunteer and know, and help out, they can learn a little bit more about the organization, why it was founded, and our core values, because we have what we call the ILC philosophy, and that guides people through advocacy and the values that we have as far as respect and independence and dignity and self-direction and different things of that sort.
That is great to know. That is wonderful. In your own opinion, what do you think is the most important legislation that is passed towards people with disabilities?
Well, like I said, the ADA was important, and that was enacted in 1990. And but there is another one that I think was really important, and that was the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and then also Brown versus Education, because as you know, up until about 25 years ago, children with disabilities were pretty much segregated from their counterparts. And so when I was growing up, I was treated as an equal in my home. I had homework, I had chores, I had things that I was responsible for. But in the segregated school, I wasn't called to my highest potential. I wasn't taught everything that everyone else was taught to begin with. And in 1973, when the IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, came about, people like myself were allowed to come into the public schools.
That is amazing. And we're going to take a short break, Michelle, because I want to talk more about the ADA in our next half part of our show. And so we will be right back here with Viewpoint with Michelle Williamson. Thank you.
Throughout my share of struggle and pain, your love was there and will forever remain.
Embedded in my heart, etched like a stone, which is in part from you alone.
Eternal support and unconditional love, the grace of you only comes from above.
The grace of you only comes from above.
Eternal support.
I love you so much that no words can say.
I love you so much that no words can say how happy I am that you made me this way.
Only my heart can express how I feel inside, for that's where my love will forever reside.
The greatest person that will ever live.
The wisdom you share and the love that you give made me the greatest person that will ever live.
The greatest person that will ever live.
Through a veil of grateful tears, I will carry your message throughout the years. I know that you loved me from the start, and to you I return that love with all of my heart.
Welcome back to Viewpoint, and my guest today is Michelle Williamson, Lake County Coordinator for Summit Independent Living. Michelle, welcome back to the show. We are talking about disabilities and how that affects people throughout this area. This next half of the show, we want to talk about certain different things, but most importantly, the American Disabilities Act, as you mentioned in the first part of the show. I understand that yesterday, which was July the 26th, right?
Yes.
Marked the 21st anniversary of the American Disabilities Act. Can you tell me what that means to you personally?
That means that I can live life like anyone else. That means that even though people may have outdated or wrong views about people with disabilities, I have the right to assert myself and say that I can live in a clean home. I can live by myself. I can make my own choices. I can have a job. I can go to church. I can be a part of my community. And I can travel and I can do all these things.
That's wonderful. And how does it protect you and other people out there in the community as it relates to their rights, or and also what kind of resources does the ADA give as support?
Well, if you were to read the ADA, there's a lot of phone numbers involved with the Department of Justice and legal help that will help people with learning their rights. But there's also 5 titles, and they deal with different parts of life. Like the first one, I think, deals with employment and non-discrimination in that area. And there's others that deal with aircraft carriers, telecommunications, being able to have fair housing, and there's another one that deals with other organizations such as independent living, because we're under Title V. And because of that, we get federal funding to do the services we do to help people reach their personal highest potential.
That is a wonderful thing. 21 years. 21 years, and that is such a huge milestone for such an important issue in our country, and the amount of people it serves is, you know, it's just amazing for me that that this is such a important day. And so I thank you for sharing that information. What has been the biggest barrier that you have faced?
People's attitudes. Because I can get by the architectural barriers, I can do that, but my biggest hindrance or barrier has always been people's attitudes. It's not really buildings. I can deal with that.
So it's more about the mentality of people, of what they think of a person is in disability, because you and I have also talked about stereotyping as well. How do you deal with a person who may stereotype you?
This is my personal philosophy and how I deal with it. If they're an older person and they come across and they don't use people first language, like saying a person with a disability or she's a wheelchair person, I usually let that go on, and I'm a little more gentler with that because that was the culture in which they were brought up in, and they just need to learn. If it's a younger person, say under like 20, 25, then I'm a little more to the point with them and say, excuse me, I'm not stupid. I have a disability, but I can understand you. So you don't need to shout, you don't need to talk slow. Please, I'm not an idiot.
Absolutely. And you know, one of my viewers, I was talking to them, and I mentioned to them that you were going to be in the show, and one of the things that they asked is that, what is the proper way of saying, is it disabilities, is it handicap? You know, because people want to be able to, they wanted to be able to be politically correct. And so can you tell me what the difference is? And what is the proper way of addressing someone?
Okay, saying someone has a disability is not being rude. That's stating a fact. However, when you deal with someone with a disability, please do not use the word handicapped. And the reason why we say that is because it conjures up an idea of somebody out on the street with a cap in hand, looking for alms or looking for someone to help them out. And it makes them seem as we are victims, and we're not victims. We're just people that have other ways that we need to deal with life. So we ask that people not use the term handicapped. So when you talk to somebody with a disability, you would say, she is a person with blindness, she is a person with cerebral palsy, or she is a person that uses a wheelchair. And that's kind of something I alluded to earlier, was people first language. So you always denote the person. If you ever want to be correct, it's always denote the person first.
Thank you so much for making that clear, because I think that there's always been a confusion and people not knowing what's right and what's wrong, and what is politically and socially acceptable. And so I wanted to just ask you another question regarding youth who have disabilities, who are in the school system. Do you help youth that may be going in the school system? Is there any support for the youth?
Yes, there is, and I'm so glad you asked that, Rosie, because we at Summit, especially in the Ronan office, would like to reach out to more youth. And I don't really know whether they're aware that we're here, but yes, we do free presentations to all the public schools that they would just ask us. And we would talk to the students based on their level of grade, you know. If they're in high school, we would bring something about history and civil rights. If it's small children.
That's great,
yeah.
Michelle.
And then we would bring in things like props to show little ones so they're not afraid. And we talk, but we also have them ask questions, because we know that the more education we give to our children about not being afraid of people with disabilities, then they will automatically feel like they can ask questions without being told they shouldn't say that, or they shouldn't stare, or they shouldn't do whatever. Because children are just curious. And yes, we would love to reach out to the youth.
That is great. Whenever that happens, if that ever happens, that you give some kind of presentation like that, I want to be there. I think that there's a wealth of knowledge that you have, and I just really just want to say thank you so much for being here. For closing remarks, Michelle, do you have any closing remarks or personal insight that you'd like to share to my viewers?
Just realize that people with disabilities, no matter what their body may be saying on the outside, that you may see, or even some of those individuals where you don't see the disability, they're just people. They are people going through stuff like everyone else. So please just don't give us a hand out, but be there to give us a hand up if we need it. And just be our friends, be our family. Just be there and be yourself.
Hand up. That's great. Thank you so much, Michelle, for being on the show. And I wish you all the best in the world with the work that you do, with all the advocacy that you do in this area. And again, this is Michelle Williamson, Lake County Coordinator for Summit Independent Living Center. Thank you once again for being here on Viewpoint. We really appreciate you watching. And I look forward to talking with you once again. Thanks. Bye.
Level stukkel sedig skalsessen jo numten. Stukkel siar stukkel skul stukkel kasklikten nu wewatchten. Du takkasen septemsten stukkel nu wewatchten. To me okakas kakaiman tutnumstum. Stukkel tilkakul emotion was out quantes. Siatukaks jo nun. Tamaka ut skalik. Takkakas hoistum. Tapis takkakas tutik pot luis jo nun. So could say we at quao to coiachnas quachme. Yes be may luis tukasin could quite them. We at qua. Lamlam tukas chilos dam. Tukas coldstum tukan coldmas tukas kaili. Lamlam she hoy.